Yeah, he keeps throwing hammers at watermelons and calling it research.
Okay, that is already very worrying to me.
Gentlemen, I suppose ye all are wondering why I've asked you here today.
Why is he doing that accent, though?
It's the Darien Scheme
Of
today.
course it is, yeah.
Silence! 'Tis about our patrons. At my count, a mere 1 out of 10,000 of our listeners gives us the money we so need to run this expedition.
That's not even remotely close to the real number.
He knows people can see how many patrons we have, right?
My hopes are today's episode will roast them to glory, and soon we'll see the same numbers that Scotland did, a rousing 1 out of 5.
Yeah, okay, just 2 things. 1, your accent sounds like Richard Dawkins doing Fat Bastard. 2, today's story has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Darien Scheme was about an already down on their luck group trying to explore a new territory they had no experience in.
Even though there were already huge players in the field and
who actively didn't want them to succeed. Oh my God, we are the Darien Scheme.
Indeed we are, gentlemen. Indeed we are. But if we get 1 in 5 patrons, we'll be making $20,000 an episode.
How many listeners do you think we have?
100.
Okay.
200.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts because this is the internet and that's how it works now. I'm Cecil, and I'll be leading this doomed expedition, but I'll need a group of fools to sail the seas with. First up, a man who would hunt a sea turtle for sport, and a man who eats like one, Tom and Eli.
Okay, that is a filthy lie and an unsubstantiated rumor, Cecil. I knew it wasn't sporting. I did it to watch it suffer. Facts matter. Now more than ever, sir.
And boy, did it suffer. Yeah.
Okay, it was my thing about the time that teen hunted me down on a beach during spring break, because I'm still very upset about that. Yeah.
And also joining us tonight, 2 men who the French and English are also desperately trying to sabotage, Noah and Heath.
Yeah, but to be fair to England and France, I'm taking Eli to them in October, so I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, plus, nobody likes it when you call in a debt, but I think it has to be said. England, France, remember when your countries were getting taken over by a Nazi? Well, we'll help. We'll help. Ball over the fence. We'll help.
Tag in.
Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. As you'll learn from today's story, the best way to fail is with other people's money, and our patrons help us do that. If you'd like to learn how to join their ranks, be sure to stick around to the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Noah, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
Well, today we'll be taking the advice of prolific patron subject suggester Major Dennis Bloodknock, and we're going to talk about the Darien Scheme.
And Mr. Bosnick, you paid an unemployed librarian to write this for you. Are you ready to represent it as your own?
Sure am, Cecil. Libraries are boring, terrible places for poor people.
Yeah. Very true. Let's just replace them with Amazon.com. Anyway, what was the Darien Scheme?
The Darien Scheme was a doomed effort by the Kingdom of Scotland, itself something of a doomed effort, to become a major trading nation by establishing a colony in Panama and creating an overland route between the Atlantic and the Pacific. And the tension in the story basically comes from England's desperate effort to kill the scheme before it could die of natural causes, much like they did to Scotland. It's a real full circle tale of how the British have treated Scotland today. A real full circle.
Well, luckily, both those nations are white, so we'll receive 0 emails. How does all this get started, Eli?
So, like most of my excuses, this starts with a European famine of the late 17th century.
Okay, well, that's weird because you don't look like a guy with famine-based excuses for things, I'm just saying.
So, known as the Great Famine because they were too hungry to come up with a cooler name, the catastrophe occurred from 1695 to 1697 and causes massive starvation throughout Europe.
Okay, so you use this to put your transgressions in perspective. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone else look at those two dates and think, based on this body, I could go 2 years with no problem?
Yes, Tom, I do.
I'd be safe.
I do.
I'd be safe.
So it was at its worst in Estonia, Latvia, and Scandinavia, but by some estimates, it was responsible for 2 million deaths in France and northern Italy as well. And while it seems petty to complain about economic consequences in light of stuff like that, all these dead people elsewhere was killing Scotland's export sector. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm trying now to think of the last thing that I ever saw that said made in Scotland on it. And like, surprise, surprise, nothing jumps to mind. And I've been to Scotland.
Right.
They probably would have switched to coffin making, but they cut all their trees down. And instead of building something, they just played catch with the trunks.
They have the coolest stereotypes.
Scottish sports are absurd. Like, I'm pretty sure I saw a Scottish triathlon once. It was just a guy biting a tree until it fell into a river like a beaver, and then just like kind of jogging next to it while it floated. And then he punched a rock at the end. Somebody held up a scorecard. I think it was a triathlon.
So, of course, Scotland had plenty of problems already. They didn't really make anything anybody wanted. Tom, call backwards. They didn't have much in the way of natural resources, and even the things they were good at, like shipbuilding, were increasingly being outsourced in a deliberate effort by England to suppress their economy and keep them dependent on British exports. On top of that, French protectionism was cutting into the cattle trade that represented their only other major industry.
I feel like the chief export list for Scotland always deliberately leaves off Scots, though.
I mean, not a big market then for haggis and bagpipes and accents that sound like someone is trying to talk while simultaneously swallow a scrotum full of broken glass and thumbtacks. Color me shocked. Nobody wants that shit.
Right. So this ended up with what the Scots call the 7 ill years.
Other countries call that childhood, though.
Right.
He like calls that any 7 years, I think.
Yep, that's any 7 years in my life ever. Now, if we backtrack any further, you'll find that those come after some pretty ill years dating back to the Roman Empire, but the 1690s were particularly hard on Scotland. 4 massive crop failures in a 5-year period, along with all the economic pressures, led to severe depopulation and a desperate effort to make Scotland great again.
1690s Trump just gallops out to give a Braveheart speech on a horse, no shirt on, his face is all smeared in paint. 1690s Putin just shaking his head. Dude, I said blue and white. Fucking blue and white, man. What are you doing?
I'm just picturing like a team of Scottish historians trying to decide on which 7-year span to claim this title. And one guy's just like,
Right.
excuse me, would it be easier to try to find 7 good years? It's like less of a needle and a stack of needles kind of thing.
So amid all of this, you start getting predictable unrest among the population, who are looking across Hadrian's Wall and seeing England crushing it at the sea trade. So the Scots figure they should just do what those guys are doing. So in 1695, Scottish Parliament created the Bank of Scotland, revamped their school system, and chartered the Company of Scotland to get in on some of that oceanic commerce money.
And charted a course right through the Bermuda Triangle.
Bermuda Triangle, conveniently located off the coast of everywhere.
Scotland heads out to finance their new company, and they start taking up capital in Amsterdam, Hamburg, and London. But the Brits are none too keen on the idea, since they were still operating under the long outdated economic theory of mercantilism. You hear that, Donald? Long outdated economic theory of mercantilism. So basically, the English figure Scotland can only gain if England loses. So they start putting their thumb on the scale. And when it comes to the 17th century commerce, England has a hell of a thumb.
Yeah, and that thumb was huge and smelled like sheep. So
And when your thumb is that big, you're breaking the one finger to start rule. Yeah. That's not fair.
So first, the East India Company suddenly complains that Scotland has no authority from the king to raise funds outside the English realm and threatens legal action, which obligated Scotland to return all the money they raised in Hamburg. And as for the investors in London and Amsterdam, well, William of Orange just told them to ask for their money back, so they did. which means that the only people left who could invest in the company were the Scots themselves.
This job doesn't pay shit, but it does come with a nice 401k and a bunch of other Scott options. So good.
Well, they asked for their money back. What do they keep the receipt?
Yeah.
Like nobody wants store credit from Scotland.
Yeah, right.
Right. So failing to recognize that spite isn't the best motive for long-term business strategy.
No, strong disagree.
Yeah, it's why I have a job too. I have to disagree as well. So Scottish nobles poured money into the new company. I mean, money came in from every level of society. And within a few weeks, the Company of Scotland for Trading to Africa raised 400,000 pounds sterling.
Jesus.
Yeah, but they didn't really put much effort into the company title, though, did they?
Right.
It was like somebody who's yelling out slave puns, just like, what about Scot-free labor? The boss is like, no, that's stupid. It's fucking Scotland's big boat of slaves from Africa company. Moving on.
Can we name one of them Slavey McSlaveface at least? A dinghy.
That's what they called me in college. And by the way, the money they raised is equal to about 48 million bucks in today's money. And
Jesus.
about 20% of all the wealth in Scotland at the time.
Man,
Jesus
that is
Christ.
one hell of a kickscotter.
All right, that's it. Me and Cecil are building the solar road from Scotland to Panama. Give us some money.
20% of their nation's wealth, or one Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even
Convert
close.
that. I got that converted.
So now that they had a fifth of a nation's wealth at their disposal, all the CSTA needed was a wacky scheme.
Oh, I don't know, 20% of the nation's money was invested before the investment idea existed?
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, but if that's true, Scotland deserves to be poor. This is your
To the
fault.
present day, yes.
Yeah. Well, this is where we meet Scottish-born financier and trader William Patterson. Patterson had long been promoting the idea for a colony on the Isthmus of Panama that could be used as an overland gateway between the Atlantic and Pacific. He'd already been helping Scotland raise money, and since he'd already struck out with all the major European nations, he pitched his idea to Scotland, and they loved it!
Hey, so I had this idea. What if you guys get killed and enslaved by England, but in much nicer weather?
Right. So pretty much immediately, they gave up on the planned concept of trading with Africa and India. And instead, they focused all of their efforts and resources on this one risky plan called the Darien Scheme, for the name of the bay where Patterson wanted to start his colony.
Yeah, because why go with proven when unproven offers so many more options? It's like alternative medicine.
Right away, the Scottish ended up overpaying for their ships when they weren't victims of outright fraud.
Okay, well, what the fuck? Overpaying for their... I thought ships were like the thing they made themselves. Like, were they overcharging themselves?
I think they met an actual Nigerian prince when they were scouting Africa, and they sent him a ship full of gold. They figured he'd send them back an armada of like Mormon submarines or something. Yeah.
So now,
Didn't work out.
Patterson falls out of the story at this point because of some embezzlement that he may have been tangentially involved with. Rest in peace, Betty Bosnick. But Scotland goes ahead with this plan anyway. And by 1698, they're ready to send their first expedition to Panama.
I feel like history has shown us an embezzler would have been right at home in Panama.
They stick to the plan, like, let's stick to the plan proposed by the guy stealing from the plant.
Well, it's the only plan they had. So it's worth noting here that the English opposition that started as sort of like knee-jerk protectionism got way worse once Scotland decided they were going to colonize Panama. England was at war with France at the time, and they couldn't afford to piss off Spain and bring them into the war on France's side. And since, as we learned when we went to Scotland, even people who live there can't really figure out the status of that place's sovereignty, England figured that Spain would blame any Scottish provocation on them.
Okay, so just to summarize, here is my takeaway at this point. No, I'm not at all clear what's happening right now. I'm going to need a pop-up book version of that last... No,
I hear that so
don't.
much from you, Tom. So much. With England good and pissed and in possession of the world's largest navy, the first expedition set sail with 5 ships and 1,200 people.
And not for nothing, but at several points in this journey, a Scottish guy would have to turn to another guy and say, "I'm giving her all she's got, Captain."
Frequently overheard in the erotic pirate themed suites at Hampton Inn.
Now, I don't want to do a whole tangent here on the whole Jacobite rebellion because someone else wrote my essay for me and they didn't write that part. But suffices to say, at this point, we're only a few years from Scotland getting its ass handed to it by William of Orange, thanks to a bunch of Scottish turncoats.
Look, we have our own problems with orange leaders and traitors, okay?
So no sympathy.
Boy, do we.
Exactly. So once the rebellion settled down, the folks who supported England were crazy unpopular. So a lot of them volunteered for this expedition just to get the fuck out of Scotland.
To get out of Scotland, I think they'd be turning people away. Like,
You're right.
we can only take the first 1,200 people who don't want to live here. So we're going to settle this by a Scottish dance-off. Fire up the bagpipes, boys.
And since the other people on the boats also didn't like them, they created a bit of a clique that would divide the leadership of the expedition even before they reached the Americas. Not a good start.
Hey, man, why do you have a giant bag of gold that says "not a bribe" on it? I feel like that's... and why was your son-in-law meeting with British spies all the time over the last couple of years? And your lawyer did that, and you did that also last week in Finland. I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on.
On November 2nd of 1698, the expedition makes landfall off the coast of Darien Bay and christened their new colony Caledonia after the name Roman conquerors gave to Scotland back when they had to wall it off. And this is what they said, quote, "We do here settle, and in the name of God establish ourselves, and in honor and for the memory of that most ancient and renowned name of our mother country, we do, and will from henceforward call this country by the name of Caledonia."
Mel
End
Gibson
quote.
is so jealous of you right now, dude.
Thank you. It's because I can say mean things about Jews and get away with it.
All right, sugar tits, we don't have time for this. Let's keep going.
Right. Anyway, the fact that I keep talking about them arriving in Panama tells you how this whole thing's going to work out for them.
Okay, well, with things going as well for Scotland as they always go in the offing, we'll take a quick break for us to do some offensive accents and a little segment we like to call Apropos of Nothing.
Hey, Clyde, how'd the meeting go?
Not good, man. Not good.
So you couldn't close the Scotland deal?
No. We got the deal. They just don't know what they want from me.
What do you mean by that?
I do not know what they want. I literally have no idea.
Well, why the hell not?
Because they're fucking Scottish, dude. Best I can tell, they want to caramelize a panda bear, or maybe galvanize a panini. And I kept saying what, but there's only so many times you can say what before you start looking like an asshole.
Okay, fine. What should we do?
I feel like having some caramel and a panda available might be helpful.
Oh, for fuck's sake, we're shipbuilders, Clyde. I'm almost sure this is ship related.
How can you know? They're fucking Scottish.
That's true. Hey, do you think any Scottish listeners will take offense to this skit?
Hey, mark my words. When 3 centuries from now, mankind invents voice-activated devices that can process human speech at hundreds of trillions of operations per second, even they won't be able to understand Scottish accents. So, if they want to send an angry email, they can send it to Alexa, Siri, Hey Google, and Science.
And we're back. When last we left our Scots, they were sure to be the ones. History wasn't going to fuck the hardest of all the white people. How'd that go? And can we parlay them with the Irish in some way?
I can do both the voices if you want. I'm a master of both.
You do them at the same time, all the time. That's what you do.
So they make land in Panama and immediately set about building themselves a fort, which they called Fort St. Andrew. It was equipped with 50 cannons, a protective ditch, and a rampart, and an associated watch house built high on a mountain. And as nice as all of that sounded, it had no source of fresh water, and the bay it overlooked had massive tides that could wreck a ship trying to leave the harbor. So it was mostly useless, but the cannons and the ditch was nice.
With some guys just like wipes his brow, he's like, whew, there. The ditch is done. We're safe. But it comes up, takes one long step over it. Oh, fuck, go!
I just love it. It's like Scotland. Impressive looking, but mostly useless. Summed it right up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to dig in so hard, but if you want to prove me wrong, Scotland, grow a fucking crop.
Or say one sentence that Siri or Alexa can understand. There you go.
So, of course, even if the bay had been better suited to trade, it wouldn't have mattered since nobody was trading with them. I mean, Spanish authorities considered the colony a threat to the sea lanes they shipped silver through, not to mention the fact that Spain actually claimed that area as part of the Spanish Empire, and British authorities considered the colony a threat to a happy Spain, so both nations forbade their ships or colonies from trading with Caledonia, and Spain and England were pretty much all the sea traffic in the area at the time.
Okay, yeah, definitely missed the market research version of that famed Scottish MBA we're all jealous of.
Hold on, alienating your trade partners. That's oddly familiar.
So close to the fort, the settlers started setting up the city of New Edinburgh and clearing land to plant yams and maize. But as it happens, the soil there isn't great for yams and maize or any other known edible vegetable product then or now. So agriculture didn't go great, is what I'm saying.
Right. But even if it did, the business plan was sweet potatoes and edible ass beads. I mean, okay, never mind. I mean, that's a great plan, but better marketing is what they needed, is what I'm saying. They focus way too much on this trade route thing. It's this good idea.
Sweet potatoes and edible ass beads. See, you can do it. Everybody in the colony had agreed that all the letters they sent home would say everything was going hunky-dory. In fact, it's likely that the colony's leadership was dictating what everybody should write in those letters, since certain optimistic phrases keep showing up in different people's letters. It was like Catholic summer camp, you know what I'm saying?
Lots of child rape? I don't get the analogy.
Okay, well, this is a story of Central American colonialism, so let's just wait, Noah, because I have a feeling we're going to get there.
Good call. Good call.
I'll work it in. So, with all the seafarers unwilling to trade, New Edinburgh turns to the natives, because when you're lowest on the totem pole of white people, you can always look brown. But the natives had already been fucked by one group of white people offering up useless combs and trinkets for food, and they weren't drawing much of a distinction between the Scots and the Spaniards to the north. And just as Scots realized they couldn't grow or buy food, summer hits, and the malaria starts settling in hard. At its worst, the colony was losing 10 people a day to the disease.
Yeah, history doesn't have a lot of minor malaria outbreaks.
There's just one Scottish lady cook not washing her hands and giving everyone malaria. You know?
Hey, what are you doing over there, cook lady? That's weird. No, I was just reorganizing my collection of shit and mosquitoes. Yam? You want ass beads on the cob?
I, for one, am just glad we learned the Panama malaria lesson before we built that canal. So
Right? Exactly, yep. Exactly. So at this point, a couple of factors exacerbate the food problem. First of all, the leaders and the sailors that had formed that clique on the way over were mostly staying on the boats, and they were intercepting what little trade local tribes were bringing. Secondly, the rations they brought with them were improperly stored, and nobody was accounting for how bad the bug problem was going to be in the tropics. So even the emergency stores were rotting and becoming infested fast. Soon, the settlers were getting most of their food by hunting giant sea turtles, but that takes a lot of work and is especially hard if you're starving and have malaria.
There's just one optimistic Scot trying to domesticate the sea turtles, but they keep crawling out of the sheep pen, you know?
and all the other Scots are trying to fuck them. So.
Well, yeah.
Well, they're in a sheep pen. What did you want me to do?
Who doesn't like a nice slow fuck? Of course, the Spanish, thank you, Tom. The Spanish, Dutch, and British were cruel, but there was a limit. So while they refused to allow their colonies to trade foods with the Scots, they did let them trade alcohol. So that was the only thing they had in abundance. Which,
Scotland!
exactly. Which definitely also fucked up a few otherwise well-fated giant turtle hunts.
Okay, that needs to become a game show. Just a bunch of like wasted people trying to hunt giant turtles that are just slightly faster than them after all the whiskey. like a Benny Hill chase on ketamine. I would watch that. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Brandy Library, come here, turtle. So, according to the wiki, the alcohol, quote, sped up the deaths of people already weakened by dysentery, fever, and the rotting worm-infested vegetables, end quote.
This is sounding a lot more and more like Daytona Beach.
Or kind of like Eli went to a hospice and got talked into drinking.
I love it. Alcohol speeding up the deaths of Scots since 1699. And also all points before 1699. Basically, since fermentation started.
Rotting worm infested food. Are we sure the food went bad or was it just Scottish?
How can they tell?
So by the July of 1699, 8 months after they landed, they pulled up stakes and abandoned the settlement. Well, the 300 of the original 1,200 that were still alive did, anyway. Well, the 294 of those 300 that could move did, anyway.
Jesus.
They literally just left sick dudes there. 250 of the survivors made it to the New York harbor where they found friendly locals and superior pizza.
Wait. If they had at least one slice of Chicago pizza down in Caledonia, they would have been leaving with 1,200 people. That's all I'm saying.
Well, assuming they caulked it properly, yeah.
Yeah.
If they had Chicago-style pizza at home, they never would have left.
Yeah.
Right, because they would have gotten shot. Exactly.
They would have died waiting for it at fucking Pequod's. Now, excuse me, my son was born when I ordered, and he's an old man now. Now, as disastrous as this expedition was, you'd never have guessed it from the letters these starving malarial drunks were sending back home. So Scotland sent a resupply with 300 settlers that arrived in August of 1699, 1 month after the survivors from the first expedition decided to abandon the settlement. Right? They're expecting to find a bustling town, and instead they got a bunch of ruined huts and 400 overgrown graves.
Yeah. And 6 guys going, I feel happy.
And you got to figure this type of thing happens every so often throughout history. Like some family, they pack up their station wagon with all their stuff, ready to start a new life, and then they show up in Chernobyl the day after the meltdown. Fuck.
And while the two ships that make up this resupply are trying to figure out what to do, they accidentally set one of their ships on fire. So the survivors fuck off and head to Jamaica, where, of course, they're not allowed to port because fuck Scotland.
Just turn into each other on the deck, all emaciated, going, well, it's better than the one we did through Carnival still.
They get all the way to Jamaica and the dude turns to his wife. Like, I thought you had the passport. Oh, fuck.
So, meanwhile, Thomas Drummond, the leader of the group that made it to New York, thought, what the hell? Resupplied and headed back to Panama for some reason, where he found things like he'd left them, except for extra burned up husk of Scottish ship. And around the same time, Scotland, again, still unaware that this had all gone horribly wrong, sends along a second expedition, along with 5 more ships and 1,000 more settlers.
Oh my God, what the fuck? Like, I get that they got letters saying that everything was fine, but like, weren't these guys supposed to be trading and sending money back?
Yeah, right.
Didn't anyone notice that no one was sending anything back to fucking Scotland? Wasn't that literally the whole point of this thing?
Yeah, honestly, this feels more like a long con by like Scottish royalty to get rid of all their criminals. Just like, yeah, no, you guys go ahead. You set that up. We're going to be right behind you. That's going to go. I'm sure you won't mostly die and set everything on fire. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Kind of like New York did with Chicago. It's very similar, actually.
Exactly. So when this expedition arrives in November of 1699, they find Drummond and a few of the original settlers basically living in a boat they bought in New York, and they talk them into heading ashore and helping them rebuild New Edinburgh. Needless to say, the new arrivals are hugely disappointed to be building a town they were told would already be there, so morale was low.
Jesus, that sucks almost as much as promoting a podcast no one listens to.
Yeah, us and seafaring indigents in the late 17th century, nearly equivalent in suffering, except they got free oranges. So
Yeah, they had it better.
Yeah,
I want my
a little
oranges.
bit.
Yeah.
Nobody tweeted at them. So at this point, Drummond clashes with a merchant named Byers. Drummond says the first order of business should be rebuilding the fort in case the Spanish attack them. And Byers says war is unchristian. So Byers has Drummond arrested, ships off everybody who sides with him, and then Byers himself abandons the colony because he was done fucking it up more, apparently. I don't know. He's just gone.
He just leaves one pig head on a stick and heads out to his boat.
Hold on, because I'm a little confused. Is the punishment here being shipped away from a malaria and starvation besotted hellhole? Like, how is everyone not running around with a list of laws to break like groceries?
And just then, when things are at their darkest, a new leader arrives in the form of Alexander Campbell of Fonab, who the company sent to organize the colony's defense.
Their defense against what? They wanted walls to keep everybody out of their human compost pile of maggots and malaria? What do you defend?
So, despite the general apathy, Fofo Fashosho was an inspirational leader that managed to really turn things around. He fortified the city, he instilled hope in people, and he got himself nearly fatally wounded a month later when he attacked the Spanish. This provoked the Spanish into a siege that lasted about a month before they negotiated a truce and abandoned the settlement for the last time.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good indication your city's fucked. Like, again, the Spanish show up to attack, but they can smell the place probably from miles away. And everyone's like, so, siege then? We're going to stop right here? Siege? Great. Great. It's like the drone strikes of 1699. Big fail.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Scotland, come on. Like, if you want me to stop making fun of you, have a military hero that doesn't have an almost in his tale of victory, okay? Just the one.
Yeah, okay, like I feel like noble defeat is overrated. Like an ignoble victory is still a victory, Scotland. Maybe try for one of those.
Just for that.
Ignoble victory is still a victory is actually on the inside of my wedding ring. Fun fact. How do people know that? But you have to remember that 1/5 of the Scottish economy is invested in this scheme. So the company, in a desperate effort to recoup some of this money, sends 2 ships laden with trade goods to Africa. Remember that plan? But they send Thomas Drummond, since he did such a great job in Panama, I guess. And they even make his brother Robert Drummond the captain. So instead of doing what they were supposed to, they sold trade goods for slaves, took them to Madagascar, and got both of their boats stolen and burned by pirates.
Yeah, and someone dumped their books too and gave him a swirly.
I thought Mr. Drummond only had the 2 black boys. Well, different strokes, I guess.
They
We
moved the
found
world.
it. We found the child rape jokes, everybody. You thought we wouldn't, but we found them. Right. So the company made 2 more efforts to revive the colony.
Oh, good. I wouldn't want them to quit while they were way behind.
So the first ship they sent was lost at sea, and they couldn't afford to build a second one, so they hired one out of London. But as soon as they got that one loaded up, the East India Company seized it. And the Scots got so pissed off about that they ended up hanging 3 English sailors that had fuck all to do with any of this.
Why would they what?
Who knows? They were just like, all right, end of the day. So this series of failures devastated the already weak Scottish economy and is often cited as one of the main reasons for the Acts of Union in 1707. In 2011, the last vestige of the venture was wiped away when the government changed the name of the area from Puerto Escocos, Scottish for Escocos? Escocos.
Escocos? I'm going to say Escocos.
Escocos.
Oh, no, it's
Spanish for
Escocos.
Escocos, Spanish for Scottish port, to Puerto Inhabagana.
Inagata Davida.
Inhabagana. In honor of a hero that lived nowhere near there. But to be fair, nobody lives anywhere near there because it's tropical shithole full of fatal shitting diseases even today.
Well, Eli, if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Now would be a bad time for the United States to start a space force.
Are you ready for the quiz?
Hit me with your best, Scott.
Yeah. All right.
Shit tits.
While they ultimately landed on the Darien Scheme, it wasn't the only investment on the shortlist. What else did the Company of Scotland consider investing a fifth of their national economy on? Was it A, 12 CDs for a penny? Was it B, Amway? Was it C, the Dairy-O scheme, in which the farmer takes a wife, the wife takes a child? Anyway, by the end of it, a lot of lonely cheese sends you $1 each. But anyway, that song is so fucked up, I had to look up the lyrics for that question. A nurse takes a bull at one point in that song.
What the fuck?
Right? Or was it D, a national reverse mortgage, which is kind of what the Act of Union actually is.
Yeah, I'm going to go with D.
It was D, yeah. No.
National reverse mortgage.
It was D.
All right, Eli. Eating turtles is actually a pretty popular thing to do here in the States. Here it's called the Snapper Challenge. What are some other popular dishes you can make with this reptile? A, stuffed shells. B, box tails. C, soccer tortoise. Or D, leatherback ribs. I want my leatherback. I want my leatherback ribs.
Just because that's stuck in people's head now, D, leatherback ribs.
All right. Eli, Scotland isn't exactly known for its powerful history as a colonial power or vibrant economic leadership. Instead, Scotland has given us which of the following treasures? A, Scotch, whiskey that is distilled and then set on fire, invented to forget that you are Scottish. B, golf, a game where a tiny ball is hit into a just slightly less tiny hole, invented in a land of cliffs so you can pretend dad accidentally fell instead of jumped to his death upon realizing he's Scottish.
Jesus.
C, bagpipes, an instrument exclusively played at funerals, because being released from the hell of being Scottish is the only time to celebrate with music.
Fuck.
Or D, haggis, because if eating shit is your only option, you should probably boil it first.
I'm going to go with C, bagpipes.
Sure.
Yay, I win.
All right, Eli, what was something successful that's happened in the history of Scotland? It's not multiple choice. I'm really asking. I'm going to go with secret answer A, our Edinburgh appearance. The closest Cecil and I have ever been. That is incorrect. It was blank. C.
All right, Heath, you win. You get to pick who does the essay next week.
All right. Noah again.
Sure, why not?
All right, now I'm going to toss it over to Sarah for last week's Twitter answer and this week's Twitter question.
Thanks, Cecil. Last week's question was, if you could make one thing disappear into the Bermuda Triangle, what would it be? The answer comes from Skeptic Bread on Facebook with this. Eli's asshole. Bonus points for tearing apart the space-time continuum and saving us from ourselves. This week's question is, if you could pack only one thing, what would you bring from Scotland to Panama? Just retweet or Facebook share this episode with your answer for a chance to be next week's winner. Back to you, Cecil.
All right, well, for Eli, Noah, Tom, and Heath, I'm Cecil, thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, and by then, Noah will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can listen to Tom and I over at Cognitive Dissonance, or you can listen to Noah and Heath begrudgingly talk to Eli over at The Scathing Atheist, God-Awful Movies, and The Skeptocrat. And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per-episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod, or leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, check the show notes, or buy tickets to the live show, be sure to check out citationpod.com.